I usually approach this when I visit customers for an audit, and my task is to audit their environment. I usually think of it like building my own home. So I build my home. So before I think about how to choose my furniture, how do I choose my room, my kitchen or my kids' room? I have to think back to how the design of my apartment will look. So this is usually typical mistakes that I see in every environment. I just gave an example. There are many of them, but this is the one I'm focusing on. Usually you'll find that the customer, hopefully none of you here have this situation, but usually the customer has an environment for Azure and they have one root management group, then one subscription. So if you have one subscription, then you deploy all resources there. You ask the DevOps team, the application team, the developer team, and the network team to deploy resources all under one subscription. And this is like when you have an environment, when you have, again, your apartment, so it's really flat. So you don't have to stay in any particular room. You still haven't decided where the bedroom is or if it's a room or a kitchen. It's just like a flat apartment. So you'll find two types, even if you have the same subscriptions. Then you'll find all resources for different environments, a new environment, a production environment, and a shared environment, all under one subscription. And by the way, there's a worst case scenario for that. You have two environments like dev, UAT, and prod and shared all in the same network. So I'll come back to this topic later. But imagine now you have all your environments under one subscription. You don't have any governance. And usually I start with governance. I'm not starting with the customer network or looking at security like how the firewall's set up. Not concerned about that right now. We'll get to it later. But I need to see how the environment is designed. So that's why I start with the subscription. So if I see this mess, 100, 100, everything is a mess. So you can't tell me I have firewalls. I've purchased a big firewall. I'm not naming any products. But then you have Azure Front Door, you have API management, then you mention or you put all resources under one subscription. So all of this, there's no doubt about it. So this is a mistake. So that's usually how I start. I build my design. Yes, I have my root management group done. Then I create the management group, then I create the subscription. I create the resource group and then my resources. So what would that look like when you put it all together? How many management groups do you have? So when you design, one of the mistakes I often see is that the environment or both designs fail because you don't really understand the environment, the subscription, or the governance that you built. An education sector is different from the health sector, from the oil sector, from the banking sector. You really need to be aware of what the company is working for. You just can't go to Microsoft.com, take the best practices, go there and just copy and paste and tell your manager. This is my best practice because I found it in the Microsoft documentation. Yes, it's based on documentation, but you have to be smarter. When you're designing your environment or your department, you should, okay, because maybe you have 3 kids, maybe I have 2, and you have 4. So you can't design every apartment the same way. So you have to be smart. Yes, you have identical rooms for them, but based on their situation, based on their kids, it's the same. You can't just download the environment. This is what I see in every environment. I can see it. I asked a customer why you use this design, and he told me I just go to Microsoft, download the diagram, and build the same thing. But really, the banking sector, for example, I'll use the banking sector since I work with many banks, it's actually very different. We have different applications and maybe even specialized ones. There are internal applications that the banking sector uses, and there are external applications. How can we design for that? If you look at the education or health sectors, they each have different perspectives and viewpoints. We can't just take what I'd call a generic design and push it onto all customers. So really, you need to truly understand what your environment is being used for. Are there applications that are both internal and external for your customers, or maybe for your environment? So this is a typical design, and in some ways, this is how I work. So after I've managed to grow, this already exists in my environment. I need to build something called, I don't know if anyone is aware of what's considered really cool these days. So I was wondering, have you actually heard about this specific model or this impressive piece of work before? Okay, so now let me try to give you a clear and detailed example. If you're living in a building, okay, so in this building, you have different levels and you have different apartments. Okay, so what is the hub for us? The hub is the shared place that anyone from these apartments has the right to go to, like a garage. If you go to your place, you have a garage that everyone from your neighborhood can access. This is what I call a hub. So, what is a spoke? Because we have another word called spoke. Spoke means your apartment. My apartment, your apartment. So, you have different access. So, my key cannot access your apartment, and your key cannot access my apartment. But everyone can access the hub. So, I designed it from a governance perspective to have a core, which is called the hub. Imagine starting with a primary central hub or a foundational core, and then establishing another secondary hub alongside it. My goal is to carefully build out a comprehensive shared environment for critical resources like Azure, specialized firewalls like Azure, robust API management, shared networks, and maybe even specific applications that every single person in the organization might be using on a daily basis. Okay, then the next thing I designed was something called landing zone management. Has anyone heard the term landing zone before? Okay, so a landing zone means I'm trying to fly from Luxembourg to Germany. So in Germany, it should be about providing and building the right place that allows the flight to land smoothly and stay organized. So that's why when I build the landing zone, it means I need to create a space or platform that everyone can access, but each one will be different. For example, in my environment, I have 10 applications. I'm just giving an example, but in my environment, I have 10 applications. So with 10 applications, it means that under this centralized management group, you should create 10 management groups. Then, in each environment, based on the design and your developer's needs, do we need a live environment, a UAT environment, a production environment, or maybe something called a logistics environment? Also, do you have any questions about this? Sorry, but remember, all those applications should be under something called a landing zone. To clarify, it's called a management group, not something else. Okay, because later on I will explain why we do it this way. Okay, then we have a management group called Sandbox. And this is often missed because I see this mistake quite a lot. Many customers I visit actually do this because imagine you have application X and you have dev, UAT, and prod. So someone goes to dev and treats the dev environment like a sandbox. So, for example, a consultant and an engineer both access the same environment, and it becomes a mess. Because if you follow best practices as a developer, you should have identical environments. Don't let the engineer have a separate layer. Then, when you try to install or deploy an application, things won't be identical. So, you shouldn't treat the dev environment as a test environment. It's a development environment. So, you should treat it that way with separate resources. Don't even share anything with it. So you have a sandbox and maybe there's a policy or something like that. For me as an architect, if I have a new project or a new service, I need to test it. I go there, build my environment, and after 10 days, it's deleted. I can't use my dev environment anymore. It's a mess. Then after 6 or 7 months, I forget to clean up my environment. Then I get a bill for something like $10,000. Then my manager asks me, "Why do you have this bill? Please investigate then." What's that? Because, yeah, I built it 6 months ago, but I forgot to delete it. So that's why you should. We have identical segregation for the sandbox, and you have to be restricted with that. That way, no one can mess up the environment or your environment. And there's also something that everyone forgets for the decommissioned matching group. What does decommission mean? Decommissions. Sometimes we have applications that are upgraded or migrated from on premises, and we have some resources that maybe we plan to delete. You can't just leave them there until one day you remember, because you won't remember. So you'll forget, and you'll also be charged for them. So you just move these resources into decommission, keep them there with a policy for 10 days, 1 month, whatever your policy is, then you can delete them. So again, designing for governance is really, really important. Because based on that, you will build your apartment. You can create identical rooms, and you can start to furnish your apartment. Without that, everything would be lost. So you can't tell me you invest in buying a firewall, an environment, a network, and so on. But then you don't actually have real segregation. So what do we do now? We try to start the segregation journey. So this is the big picture. I will try to zoom in a little bit on each aspect. But before moving on from this slide, does anyone have any questions? Just to make it clear. All right, so then